All right. Hello, folks. We are live. All right. Welcome to the event, the Pandas event, your Pandas questions answered. So before I get into any logistics or an introduction, I just want to make sure you can see me and you can hear me. So if you can see me and you can hear me, go ahead and in the chat, just type where you are right now. Where are you in the world? Let's see. Germany, San Francisco, Miami, 2 from Germany, Finland, San Fran, New Delhi, Atlanta, Tel Aviv, Columbus, Spain, another Germany, Connecticut, Portugal, NYC, Minnesota. This is great. Very cool. Feel free to continue to post. Thankfully, no one's, at least that is responding, is having problems. If you do run into technical problems at any time during the webcast, first, you can try just posting in chat and seeing if others are having the same problem. Most likely, maybe your connection is slow or something like that. But usually the solution with Crowdcast is just to refresh your browser or to go ahead and try another browser. People have told me that Firefox works really well. I'm using Chrome, but really up to you. But that's usually going to be the solution if you have any technical issues, okay? So couple logistical items, and then I'll introduce myself, and then we will get started. So I posted a link in chat, which is, of course, buried now, but let me post it again right now. And there it is. Okay, so that is a GitHub gist, and it just has 5 lines of code, but it's lines to load 4 example data sets. And if you want to follow along with the code today, which is completely optional, you can just watch if you like. But if you want to be coding along at home, I'm going to be using some example data sets, and you might as well load them now so that when I start using one, you're not stuck on not having the data set and having to figure out how to get it. So go to that URL, 5 lines of code, run it in your Python editor of choice, and you'll be basically ready to follow along with any code I use during the webcast, okay? So that's one thing. Second thing is, if you have not already participated in the polls, there is just right under the video, there's a polls tab, and go ahead and click on that, and there's a couple polls. I'd love to know a little bit more about the folks that are here. And if you have some more time and want to, you can scroll down further and look through the questions, pick out some that are of interest to you, and go ahead and upvote them. I will be answering the questions roughly in order of popularity. I might get through all of them. I might not. I don't know. So might as well pick out the questions that you are particularly interested in and have some influence on how I spend the time today. Okay. So those are just some logistics. A little introduction about me. So my name is Kevin Markham. And for those of you who don't know, I'm the founder of Data School. I teach data science in Python online, predominantly online and predominantly Python. And my goal is to make data science more accessible so that you can either launch or accelerate your data science career. So that's my overall goal. And I hope that some of the resources I put together, like today's webcast, are helpful in making that happen. Okay. My background is in computer engineering, and I've spent a lot of time in the classroom teaching data science. And now I'm mostly doing it online, though I was in the classroom just yesterday in DC with some data science students at General Assembly, giving a guest lecture. But I love Python, I love data science, love teaching. And personally, I'm 36 years old, live in Washington, DC, in the United States, lived here about 11 years. and got married a couple months ago. So those are some, random things about me. So that's it on kind of intro. Just to talk a little bit about how it's going to work today. I'm going to be answering questions, as you know. I'm going to go about an hour, maybe longer if I feel like it, and there are still questions left. We'll see, or whenever my voice gives out, which has been known to happen. What else? Just looking over at a few notes on things I wanted to mention. Okay. So in terms of the chat, so the chat you're posting in, that's good for like commenting on something I'm talking about right now. So if I'm answering a question and you have a follow-up, go ahead and post it in chat. If you have a new question, something that I'm not talking about at that moment, go ahead and post it, like use the big orange button underneath the video that says, ask a question. Click that button, type in your question there, hit enter, and that way I can get to the question kind of separate from what I'm talking about right then. And I will try not learning. I will try, it's actually very hard to talk and read chat messages at the same time, but I will do my best to try to pay attention to the chat as well. But it may be challenging. So what else? This is being recorded. All the questions will be time coded, so you can come back to this recording later and just click a button that says view answer, and it will jump to that point in the video when I answered it, and it will save you some time if you just want to watch that one thing. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on any one question because there are a lot of questions. So this isn't like a 20-minute tutorial on something. So I reserve the right to skip really complicated questions or questions I don't know the answer to, because I don't know everything in pandas. I know a lot about pandas and I teach pandas, but that doesn't mean I know everything. So I may skip things. I might not have a good answer for every question, but I will do my best. Okay, so with that, let's just take a quick look at the poll results and see who's here. And I just clicked on polls, and it looks like in terms of Python experience, it is almost all beginner and intermediate, very few, one advanced, and almost nobody who reports they have no experience, just a few folks. Pandas experience level, no one who says they're advanced. A lot of beginner and intermediate, but all levels welcome here. And have you watched my video series on pandas? Most popular answer is I've watched all 30 videos, which I cannot believe. So thank you for spending all that time with me. That's like 7 hours of video unless you watch me faster, which is fine too. Yeah. The video series, by the way, there's a green button just below the video says watch the pandas video series. You can click and you'll get to that. You can check that out after the webcast. Okay, we're 9 minutes in. I want to get to questions, so let us jump in. Oh, and I need to share my screen, so that will just take me a moment. All right. Okay. All right, and let me minimize my face so you can actually read what's on screen. That's the gist that I was talking about. I'm actually going to be in this IPython notebook, which is not something I've posted, but that's the environment I'm going to be using here, and you can use what you like at home. Okay, one more second, and let me jump right in with the first question. Okay, question from Eric Chen, actually one of my students. Can you show the best way to use group by and pivot function on a pandas data frame? Okay, the best way. All right, well, I'll interpret that how I like. let's see what data set. So I've loaded my data sets here, and I'm going to use the drinks data set for this one. And so I'm just showing the head of this data set, just so you have a bit of a picture of it. So how might we use a group by? Well, a group by is to answer the question, like, for a given category, for each category, summarize some numeric about that category. Okay, so one you might do is drinks.group by. The only one that would kind of make sense in this context is continent. And I won't say too much about the data sets other than, like, you know, this is a country and its alcohol consumption per year, and this column contains the continent. So if I group by continent and select, for instance, the beer servings series, and I can check the mean. So what I've done here with a group by is to say for each continent, group by continent, for each continent, what is the mean of the beer servings series? Okay, so for each continent, we now have, it outputs a series, and it has the name of the continent and its mean beer servings. So the answer for when you use this is when you have a question that you could phrase as for each continent, for each gender. I want to know something about a group. Okay, I want to summarize a group in some way. What's the max beer servings for each country? Sorry, for each continent. So you just have an aggregation function here at the end, and that's the usage of group by. Follow-up question: how to get multiple columns at once? So you could do, let's see. Well, let's see. If you wanted, you're asking, how do I get the, oh, okay. You're asking, I think this will provide your answer, and then we can all talk about it. But if you leave out the column, it will do that operation on all of the columns. So what is the max? Beer servings, spirit servings, wine servings, total liters, and country for each continent. Okay, and for the country column, it just used the last one alphabetically. Okay. The second part of that question is about the pivot function. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's probably more the subject of a full tutorial. Okay. Pardon me one second. All right. Next question. Can you explain the differences and when to use append versus concat, merge versus join, pivot versus pivot table versus crosstab, and stack versus unstack? Okay. Abhi here has done something very clever, which is to put 4 questions in the same question, each of which could take a while. But I mean, it's a good question. So I'm going to give you kind of short answers because teaching all of these could take the whole hour. But append versus concat. Append, let's see. So concat is a top level method, meaning you would say like pd dot concat, and append is a data frame method. So you would say like data frame name dot append. And concat is a more general method. It has more capabilities. Append is more narrow. So I actually never use append. I only use concat, and it's to concatenate either rows on. Basically, you've got 2 data frames, either with the same columns, and you want to add them, stack them on top of one another, or they've got the same rows and you want to stack them next to one another. That's what you use concat for. So short answer, I never use append. I always use concat. Second, merge versus join. Kind of the same. Merge is a top level function. So you use pd.merge. Join, I think it's just a data frame method. So like data frame name dot join. And just like before, so merge is a more general function with, I think, more power than join. And I don't think you ever need to use join. I would recommend you always use merge. Okay. I never use join. I don't think there's a compelling use case for join. Maybe there is, but I just recommend using merge. All right. Number 3, pivot versus pivot table versus crosstab. Okay. I would say that pivot table is the most general. And if you're going to learn one of those, I would invest the most time in pivot table. It has the most options. I think you can accomplish all the same things with a pivot table that you could with pivot and crosstab, but even more. So I would stick with pivot table. Stack versus unstack, number 4. So the way I use Unstack is when I have a, let's think, I have a multi-index and I want to go to a regular index. Let me pull up, let me get a good example for this, so that you can see something on this. So if I do drinks.group by continent, dot beer servings dot describe, okay, that gives you a hierarchical index. Okay, it's a series, but it has a hierarchical index. Okay, now if you want to turn this into a single level index, you use Unstack, okay? And it kind of moves the data around, okay? I don't know how to better describe it. It changes the shape of the data. So it has a single level index. Stack is the opposite. And it goes back from a single level index to this multi-index or a hierarchical index. Okay, so that's one example of kind of at a at a conceptual level what stack and unstack do. Beyond that, I don't know what I want to say about that. They're reverses, they're opposites of one another. Okay. All right. Next question. All right, from Raphael. Besides series and data frame, I'd like to see some examples using panel data. How to move from data frame to panel data and vice versa. Okay, you guys guys and girls are starting with the more complicated questions. Okay, so panel data. Let me come up with a quick example so that we can have a visual, and then I'll kind of comment on panel data. Okay, so let's see. All right, I'm going to create a data frame, and all right, so I'm going to pass it a dictionary, and I'm going to add a couple columns. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the data frame. I'm going to create a hierarchical index, and then I'll show you how to turn it into a panel and back into a data frame. So let's say we have some names. How about I want to save on typing. I wouldn't bother following along with me on this one if you're following along, because it's going to be more than a little bit of typing. So we've got some names. How about, so those are maybe people's names. These are days. 1, 2, 1, 2, and you'll see how this kind of all makes sense in a second. Oh, actually, I need quotes around that because these are column names. We'll say weight. So these are 2 people measuring their weights and heights. So we'll say 100, 103, and 130, 129. I think this will work. and maybe height. Okay. How about this person grew an inch in one day, and this person did not. Okay. So, sorry for that, all that typing. Here's our data frame, okay? So it's two people, A and B, and they're recording the day one or day two, what was their height that day and what was their weight that day, okay? So if I set a multi-index, so I'll say df.set index, okay? I guess I will, let's see. I think in the videos, I've only shown setting a single index, but you can actually set a multi-index. And maybe we'll do name. Well, it would make the most sense to do name and day. And now we have a hierarchical index, okay? So what you're kind of looking at here is for each person, we're looking at their kind of day, their, you know, it's kind of the natural groupings. Like using just A or B as the index, you've got these duplicate days. If you use day as the index, you've got duplicate names. And what you really want, kind of the logical grouping in the data, is you've got a person and then the day. Like this person, here's the height and weight on day one, here's their height and weight on day two. Same thing for B. So this kind of makes more conceptual sense. This is a hierarchical index, and you can turn it into a panel with this method toPanel, okay? And you get something that I don't really understand. I gather that panels are from econometrics, and I don't work in econometrics, so I don't really understand the kind of major axis, minor axis kind of thing. But it's three dimensions, okay? So that's why it's called three-dimensional data. And it's got an items axis, a major axis, and a minor axis. But really, it's just, and to get from a panel back to a data frame, you use this toFrame method. It's really just representing the same things as this hierarchically indexed data frame, but just in a different way. And perhaps you slice it differently, okay? Or there are different operations. I think there are a lot more operations for data frames with hierarchical indices. So I'm not actually sure if you gain anything by converting to panels, and it's possible that in the future panels may just disappear. So I don't necessarily recommend investing a lot of time learning panels unless it kind of makes sense for you. But for me, for this kind of structured data, I would just use a hierarchical index, okay? All right, next question. Let's see. From Wolfgang, actually also one of my students. What is the most efficient way to identify outliers in a data frame? Okay, outliers, I think the best answer I can give is that, well, first you need to decide what counts as an outlier, okay? So what is an outlier? You could use some sort of statistical definition, but that may not capture what an outlier means to you. So I think the first thing is deciding what an outlier looks like. And one method would be to write a bunch of rules, hard-coded rules or filters to just filter the data frame looking for those particular cases. I know that sounds very manual, but it's a manual approach, not a kind of machine learning approach. Another way you might do it is with like a visualization. So let me see what data set I want to use. How about the drinks data frame? Okay, so still this data frame, countries with their alcohol consumption amounts. And how about, actually, let's just use dot plot, and let's use a box plot, okay? So, whoops, there's one thing I missed. which is if you want plots to appear in the notebook, you should use %matplotlib inline. Okay. And then let's run that again. And we'll see our box plot. And all of these plus signs are outliers according to the statistical definition. Now, this doesn't allow you to see what are those observations. It allows you to see that for spirit servings, there are some outliers, but I don't know if that's really useful to you. So there's no like catch-all way to do outlier detection in pandas. I would tend to use a machine learning approach, or I would tend to just explore the data and hard code some rules for what counts as an outlier and maybe write some filter conditions for that. Okay. All right. Next question from Umair. How do the pandas data structures, series data frame and panels, compare to R data frames? Okay. Is there any difference in ease of manipulation or efficiency between the two? Okay. All right, let's think here. I don't know. So let's start with data frames. Pandas data frames and R data frames are roughly similar. The main things that I remember thinking about when I learned pandas after I learned R is that in R, your data frame row names, like in R, data frame row names are I think like looked down upon, or it's discouraged. You're discouraged from storing useful data in the row names. Okay. The idea in R and R data frames is you want to store all the useful data as columns. Okay. Now, pandas data frames have an index, and that index kind of looks like row names, but in pandas data frames, the index is required. There's no way not to have an index, and no one will ever discourage you from storing useful data in the index. And in fact, putting something useful and ideally unique as the index is a good way to use it because it allows you to reference those rows using the row names. Okay, so that's probably the biggest difference I noticed. Another difference is that in R, there's a difference between a missing value and not a number. And in pandas, because of NumPy, there is no difference between missing value and not a number. They're the same thing. Okay. So that's the data frame differences. There are probably more, but those are the ones that come to mind. Pandas series is kind of like a vector in R, and I don't think there's any big difference there. Well, I guess series have an index and vectors don't. I don't write much R anymore, so I haven't thought about this in a while. Panel data, I don't know if there's something like panel data in R. If someone in the chat knows, feel free to chime in, but I'm not aware of something like panel data in R. It probably does exist though. Okay. Great question. Okay. All right. Next question is from Toxads is how I'll say your name or moniker. Hi, for filtering rows, I saw you sometimes use the syntax df bracket row filter criteria, and sometimes use the syntax df.loc row filter criteria, comma, colon. Is there any difference in performance or some other reason why you should use the different methods or approaches? Okay, I like this one. Let me show you what he's talking about first, so that in case you're not familiar. Let's see. Let us use, let's try movies. Okay. All right. So let's say I only want to look, here's something I did in the video series. I only want to look for movies with a duration greater than or equal to 200. Okay. That is one way to do it. All right. That is the entire data frame. Okay. And all I did is I pass this condition into this bracket notation. Okay. And it filters the series. Okay. Now, the alternative that is identical is this, and I'll just copy paste for ease. Okay. We'll do movies.loc, and I will explicitly put the comma and the colon. Okay. So movies.loc, okay. The loc method is used for selecting rows and columns. This is a condition that says what rows do I want, and this says what columns do I want. And it turns out that colon means all. Okay, so this is these rows, all columns. I could just say I only want the genre column. I may have to put it in brackets. I can't remember. Okay. So I could just get that column, or I could get all columns. The question was, why do I do one versus the other? Well, I teach the first one because it's what most people use. So you need to understand that code. You need to recognize it and know what's going on. I teach the second one because .loc is super powerful and you need to know how to use loc. And like, I guess maybe in an ideal world, everyone would write their code like this. But, you know, programmers, or you might be one, you know, this like kind of looks, this is a tiny bit harder to read. It's got more kind of extraneous stuff. And the first one just looks cleaner. So this one's more explicit. The first one's cleaner. You can really use either. The answer is no, I don't use it for performance reasons. And I'm pretty sure they have the same performance, but you could check. The one exception I would say is I would not, here's an alternative, okay? Okay, if I just want to select the genre column, okay? So both of these, I know you can't tell, but both of these output the same result, okay? I just want the genre column. I'm getting the data frame and I'm selecting the genre. I'm doing the same thing here. Okay. So the thing is, I would rarely do the first. In this case, I would always do the second. Okay. Now, why is that? Okay. That has to do with the setting with copy warning that you'll see on occasion if you try to like assign something here. And that's because this first line is actually 2 operations, whereas this second line is 1 operation under the hood. And so there is some efficiency to the second operation, but the first operation can confuse pandas, okay, if you are trying to do an assignment, okay? So the bottom line is, if you're going to pass a condition and select out a column, I highly recommend using loc. If you want to understand this in more depth, I've got a video about the setting with copy warning. Okay. All right. In chat, Francisco asked, what's the difference between R and pandas in terms of the language? I'm not sure I understand the question. I mean, they are like, the structures are similar but not identical, but they have different syntax. So it's learning a different language, essentially. That's just the bottom line. It's like learning a different language. Okay. Next question. What about the jobs for pandas in Bangalore? Okay, well, first I'll say I have no idea about jobs in Bangalore or in DC for that matter. I don't. I'm not looking for one, and so I haven't thought much about it. But here's how I would rephrase that question. If you'll allow me, Rajesh. I would rephrase that as how do I get a job using pandas? And I think the secret here, maybe it's not a secret, it's an open secret, but companies don't hire you because you know a language. Companies hire you because they think you can solve their problems, okay? So if you want to get a job with pandas or any skill for that matter, or a data scientist job, what you want to demonstrate is not necessarily fluency with a language or a library. Those things are useful, but what you really want to demonstrate fluency with is problem solving. You want to convince the company that you know how to solve problems. So if you're looking for a job with Panda that uses pandas, I would build a public portfolio on GitHub, maybe also a blog, where you start with a question and a data set, and you answer that question using pandas, and you write about it so that they know you know how to use pandas. They know how they know you know how to solve problems. They know you know how to communicate. All of those things are just as important as the technical skills. So that's what I'll say about getting a job using pandas. Okay, on to the next question from Jeff. How do you clean / preprocess / tokenize text in a data frame without appending it to one long list so that it is a series of lists? So I appreciate the question. I stared at it for a while, and I'm not sure I don't understand what you currently are creating and what you want to create, which are kind of the key aspects for me helping you to troubleshoot here. So I don't know a specific kind of answer to give you here. I will say that if I'm going to clean text, I will do if it's strings, I'll use pandas string methods. And there are tons of them, and I highly recommend learning pandas string methods. Tokenization, I actually don't ever do in pandas that I can think of. Maybe some trivial tokenization, but I would almost always do that in scikit-learn using, say, count vectorizer. So whatever structure, you can always do something in scikit-learn and then take the output NumPy array and put it back in pandas. So that might be a solution, but ultimately it's hard for me to say without spending some time understanding this problem in more depth and what you're trying to do. So my apologies. Okay, next question from Gus. What is your favorite way to style a data frame on the web when exporting to HTML? Okay, well, data frames do have a method, and I think it's called I think it's just a data frame method like to_HTML. That will output HTML. I've honestly never used it myself. So I don't have any ideas on styling data frames. However, my overall recommendation is just that, well, I put things in Jupyter Notebooks. They are great for reproducibility, like reproducible data analysis and data science. So if it works for what you're trying to do and the audience you're trying to communicate to, I would recommend putting things in Jupyter Notebooks, and that way they can see the code you use to get your output data frame. Maybe that won't work for your particular problem, but that's what I would tend to do. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer there. All right. Let's see. Oh, okay. Jeff followed up with, well, I can iterate over pandas data frame and append it to one long list, but what if I want a list of lists that is cleaned? I still don't quite understand. I'd have to see an example. If you write me like a small piece of sample code and show me what you have and then show me what you want, I can help. But yeah, other than that, I'm not super clear on exactly what you're looking for. Let's see. There have been some other questions that have come up in chat, and I'll just encourage you to put them. Click the button, the orange button that says ask a question, and put it there. So Aniket asks, what's the difference between pandas and NumPy? Adrian asked, what are the apply functions from R in pandas? Someone asks, do pandas and R use the same commands? If you want me to answer them, go ahead and put it as a question. Click the orange button and type it there, because that way I can time code it and keep track, and people can upvote it if they're interested. So that's really what I would recommend. Okay, back to the list. Top question. And all of these I'm answering right now have one vote. So you can get your question right to the top by posting it and hoping someone upvotes. Okay. So next question. What is the best way to get value counts normalized, along with row, column, and grand totals in a single data frame? Okay, Abhi. All right, let's write some code here. Value counts. What do I? Maybe I'll use drinks. How about that? All right. Drinks dot, how about continent dot value counts. Okay. Here is value counts. Okay. If you want value counts normalized, I'll do that as well. Let's see. And I think there is normalize equals true. Okay. So that's the normalized value count. So this is essentially a tally of how many of those entries exist. This is the normalized version. So what percentage are Africa? What percentage are Europe? Row, column, and grand totals. I mean, if you're looking for like a row and column sum, you could do something like this. Drinks.sum axis equals 0, and like drinks.sum axis equals 1. So those are totals. So this is a sum over axis 0. So it's essentially what I would call the column totals, but some people might call them row totals. I'm not sure what the quote proper terminology is. These are the inverse. So this is moving across from left to right, taking the sums of those numbers. So those are how to get those pieces of data separately. How do you get them all in the single data frame? And I think the answer is you don't, because like, here's how pandas and Excel are very different. Excel, you can kind of like put stuff all like in Excel, you can just put stuff all over a sheet and it doesn't have to be connected. You could have like a chart in the upper left corner, one data set as like a little on the right, another data set below it. They can all interact. Pandas is not like that. A data frame has an index, and that index identifies like the contents. It identifies, it's the identifier of the row, and all of the rows kind of have to conceptually mean the same thing. So when you ask for all of these things to be in the same data frame, my answer is you wouldn't put them in the same data frame. Now, you could use concat to put these two things in the same data frame. And maybe I'll do that right now. I feel like I haven't been writing as much code as all of you are expecting, so I will try to write a bit more code. So let's just save these as A and B, and we'll do pd.concat, and we'll pass it a list of objects to concatenate, and we'll say axis equals 1 to put them next to one another. And here are those two things next to one another, but I wouldn't know how to get these other things all in the same data frame. And just to kind of hammer home the difference between the axes in terms of concatenation, this would stack them, okay? Axis equals 0 would stack them. Axis equals 1 puts them left and right next to one another, okay? All right. Great. Next question. All right, someone followed my advice and people are voting on questions. Love it. Izaro asked, what's the best way to convert non-numerical data from multiple columns in a data frame to numerical form for machine learning purposes? Okay. So I've got two things I'm immediately thinking of, and let's see how I can demonstrate them. Okay, so here's our drinks data set. Let's look at drinks.dtypes. And all my numeric columns are already numerics. But let's pretend that the beer servings column is actually a string, okay? And let's store it as just called beer, okay? Now, we've got this column that looks like a number, but we need it to be, but it's actually a string. So let's take a look at the dtypes. And it's actually object type, which is because it's a string. So what we actually need is for the beer column to be an integer. So I would just say drinks.beer as type int or as type float, your choice, and you will get the numeric version. Now, I don't know if that's exactly what you were asking for. Oh, okay. You asked about for multiple columns in a data frame. Okay. So if I needed to do this on a bunch of columns, I would probably do it one by one so that I could make sure I'm getting the results I want. You can use like an apply method with the top level function toNumeric, but that can do some unexpected things. It can error out for various reasons. You can tell it to ignore errors. There are some downsides to that. There is some discussion in pandas, like I've seen it on GitHub, about how to make this kind of stuff a little easier. And there are different functions for doing this, but none of them is like the one function to rule them all. In other words, there's not like one recommended way and all the other functions are useless. It's kind of this patchwork of different approaches you could use. And at some point in the future, I have a feeling they are going to settle on a better way for this. But at the moment, you can research ways to do it all at once. I would tend to do it one column at a time. Now, if you're talking about, here's my other answer. If you're talking about categorical data, okay, and you want to take categories and turn that into, put that in usage in a machine learning model, I recommend using dummy variables. And I've got a whole video about that. Just check out the videos and look for dummy, D-U-M-M-Y, and you'll see how to make those conversions. But that's kind of more than I want to get into during the webcast, okay? Great question though. All right. Tokes ads. Let's see. Whoops. Oh, something else just jumped to the top. Sorry. Right. Okay. JCVol. I use the VLOOKUP function in Excel all the time. Is there a way to do this in pandas? Okay. The answer is yes. Let me think. I made a note to myself on what data set I wanted to use to answer this. Let me find that. Oh, okay. I've got it. Okay. I think this will help. All right. I wrote down I wanted to use the movies data set, and I remember why. Okay. Here's the movies data set. And let's, so VLOOKUP, if you don't know what it is, I don't know how to like succinctly describe it other than you're like translating. Well, I'll show you how to do it in pandas. And then even if you have no idea what VLOOKUP is, you'll know how to do conceptually the same thing. So I will skip trying to explain VLOOKUP without having Excel open. Okay. So let's just do a value counts of content rating. Content rating dot value counts. Okay. So here are the different options for value counts. And let's pretend, so here's my kind of problem that VLOOKUP would solve in Excel. Okay. I want to define like a mapping where if you have content rating of R, I want to put, let me just actually make the mapping with a dictionary, and I'll just call it mapping. If you have content rating R, I want to map that to like no kids will be at this movie. If I have a content rating PG-13, there will be, maybe I'll just say no. Like no kids will be at this movie. Yes, kids will be at this movie. PG, we will say is also yes. Okay. So this is a mapping from like what I want to be able to do with the VLOOKUP is every time there's an R, I want to add a column that says no. And every time there's a PG-13 or a PG, I want to add a yes. Okay. So that's conceptually what VLOOKUP is doing. So how would we do that? It's actually pretty simple. If I remember how I wanted to do this, I think we are going to just use map. Mapping. Yeah. Okay. So that actually did it. And let me add this as a new column so you can, well, whatever. The point is, all I did with this map, with this series map method, is I told it, like, here are the source values, if you will, and here's what to substitute for it. So R maps to no, PG-13 maps to yes, PG maps to yes. So thus we should get no, 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 yes, no. And indeed we get no, 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 yes, no. And I get some NANs because I actually didn't define all of the different possible mappings. I didn't define G, etc. You know, G, yes. Okay. So I didn't define all those mappings, but if you had a complete chart, this mapping, this map function would result in a series of no's and yeses. Okay. All right. All right. Let us move on to the next one. I'm a total newbie to pandas. How can I best prepare for the webcast? Well, thanks, Ray, for the question. Obviously the webcast is happening, so I can't give you a good answer there, but I can tell you that after the webcast, if you're a total newbie to pandas, I strongly recommend my pandas video series. I put a huge amount of effort into teaching pandas kind of from ground zero. And if you watch the series, you should get a strong kind of foundation in pandas. Okay. Tokes ads. I would like to get something similar to a cross tabulation, but with my own master rows and master columns. My data. Okay, I won't read all this out. So it's really hard for me to picture this without seeing it. It would be, I could maybe do this if I had like an exact like example and here's what I want. But I don't think I'm going to be able to come up on the fly with an answer. I would say maybe a pivot table, but I'm not sure without really seeing exactly what you're looking for. Sorry to disappoint. Some questions are just too complex to answer on the fly. All right, next question. What is future warning in pandas? Why is there a function to avoid it? Boy, there are a lot of questions left. I may speed up and see what I can get through. What is a future warning? Okay, a future warning is when pandas tells you that a function you're using is not going to be supported in a future version of Python. It's been deprecated, or it's going to change how it works in a future version of Python. As such, you should probably rewrite your code to not use what you're doing, because eventually your code is going to break. So that's the simple answer. It's a warning. It's not an error, but in a future version, it will become an error, okay? Or it will not work as you think, as it used to work, okay? Why is there a function to avoid it, Newman asks. And so I don't know the particular function, but I know that some people like to suppress warnings. Why? Because they don't like to be reminded that their code will one day break, maybe. So I don't recommend turning off warnings because it's better to just rewrite your code. Okay. All right. All right. There's a follow-up question from the last one about the mapping. What if mapping was in another data frame? So what if, let's see if I can kind of translate this question. So what if it was like this? I think he's saying. So I'll just say mapping 2. I don't know. I'm not being creative here. So let's see what will happen if I pass this into the data frame. That will not give me what I want. Let's see. I would need to change the shape. I would need to say like, ratings. It would be like R, PG-13. So let's start with that. And then kids, colon, no, yes. Okay. So I may have done this right this time. Okay. So you're saying what if I had mapping 2? Okay. How would I use that to do my to do my mapping? Well, let's see. I could figure out how to, if I cast mapping 2 to a series, see what happens. P.series mapping 2. Will that do anything? No, not exactly what I wanted. I think the bottom line is number 1, I might try to translate mapping 2 into a regular Python dictionary with this as the keys and this as the values. Alternatively, I might do a set index of, let's see, I would use ratings. And then I would do I think I would do a merge with, would that work? I think I would do a merge between this data frame and movies, and I would tell it to join on like, well, left on, well, if you've done a merge, well, I could try it right now. pd.merge, and I don't remember all the, parameters, movies, maybe mapping to left on equals, left on equals content rating, right on equals ratings. Nope, on the index, actually. Okay. Oh, I didn't set it in place, so actually I will say right on ratings. Can't remember, this might, okay. Let's see if it worked. Oh, sorry, that, oh, great, kids know where are my non-R movies? Oh, because all the, oh, okay, yes, it did work. Or at least it partially worked. I don't know if there's any NANs left, but the point is, using a merge, I could map my R's to no's and PG-13s to yes. I wouldn't actually set the index, and I didn't do in place, which is why it didn't change. So we'll just, here's what I'm actually merging on, okay? So that's probably what I would do. Okay, back to the list of questions. Wow, 27 questions still left. I'm gonna keep going. I don't know when my voice is gonna run out, but keep voting because it will affect what ones I get to. I'm pretty sure I will not get to 27 more questions. Okay. All right, from Mr. B. I want to remove the last 30 rows of my data frame. I tried playing around with iLoc and drop, but I couldn't get it to work. All right, let's use a different data frame. Let's use UFO, okay? UFO.shape is 18,000 rows, and Mr. B wants to remove the last 30 rows. So what I would do is iLoc, and iLoc is about integer position. So what rows do I want? I want all rows to the last to 30 from the end. I think that should work. And all columns. Did I do that backwards? Let's see. Sorry, my computer is slowing down here. So it went through 18. Yeah, I think that worked. Okay. So let me just confirm with .shape. Okay. So all I did is I said integer positions, everything up to 30 from the end. Okay. This is like list slicing. You know, if you have range 100, okay, x equals, okay. You have a list of 100 numbers. Well, let's print. Okay. And if I want to get all except the last 30, I would just say to negative 30. So from, well, and let me print that so you can see it. So that's everything except the last 30. So I'm doing the same thing with iLoc. I want all the rows except for the last 30, and then I want all columns, okay? And it removes those 30 rows. All right. From GoatTug, I want to, oh, sorry, start answer. I want to create a column for year/month from the date time column. For example, if date time is 2016, 07, 06, 15, 59, 56, 19. I want to map 2016, 07 into a column. Okay, great question. Okay, so let's use UFO data. And this time is a date time because I define that during the import. Okay, so because of that, I can do things like this: UFO.time.dt.year. Okay, and I get the year out. Okay, and I'm going to coerce that to a string. Okay, and I'll store that as a new column called year. And then I'm going to get the month, UFO.time.dt. dt is how you access the date time options. Okay, .dt.month. And that looks good, except I want some padding here. And I know there is a padding function. I'm trying to remember if it's I think I need to first change it to a stir, and then I can do dot. That's pad. Does that work? All right, let's figure this out. Pandas API. Pandas API. str dot padding is what I want. Let's do, oh, it is dot pad. Okay, dot pad to fill care equals fill char equals 0. Oops, I did something wrong. Fill char width. Sorry, my computer's being slow. Dot pad. All right. Width equals 2, char equals 0. Series object. Okay. Oh, okay. This is a string method. Now I got it. Okay. Here's what I did. I pulled out I know it's a long line of code, but I pulled out the time series. Then I pulled out the month attribute. I coerced it to a string, and then I'm using the string method pad and say pad width equals 2. And the padding, I don't want to pad with a space. I want to pad with a 0. Okay. Now, Montesh says, for date time, can we use stir f time? I don't know. I'm not sure what that is. I try to do as much as possible in pandas because pandas is so powerful, and things you don't end up having to like use apply functions and write for loops and write if statements. You can just get it all done in one line of code. So that's how I tend to do it, but there's always a different way to do things. So UFO month equals that. And how do I finally put this all together and actually answer the question? UFO dot year dot stir dot what is the combine method? Let's see. If I want to, is it concat? Does that work? I think stir dot concat. I don't always remember all of these pandas functions. No, it's not concat. It is, let's see, cat. Stir.cat. Okay. Stir.cat, UFO dot month, sep equals dash. I think that'll work. And look at that. All right, problem solved. Okay, so I took the year and I said concatenate that with the month and separate it with a dash. Okay, so that is, and you would just, you could store this just as a new column. Okay, and UFO.head. Okay. And there you go. Here's the time. Here's the new column. There's probably a slicker way to do this, but I don't know it. So feel free to comment on the question. Al said you might be able to accomplish this with dot to period. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that, but it's certainly possible. Okay. Okay. I like this question. What's the best way to create a new column or multiple columns based on pre-existing columns in a nested for loop? And I'm not going to read the rest of this. The answer, if you're saying, how can I do this with a for loop? The answer is usually don't do this with a for loop. Okay. You rarely need to use a for loop in pandas. Now, let me think how, what can I use for this to kind of give an example? All right, let's use, sorry, where are we here? Let's use, okay, so here's the kind of thing that the, at 2K, I think, is asking about. He's trying to make a column that's like, if sex is male and age is less than 30, then the column should say young male or something, okay? That's conceptually what he's doing. He's saying, if this is something and this is something, then put whatever, otherwise put something else, okay? That's conceptually what he's doing. So let's break this down, okay? Let's break this down. The bottom line is you don't need a for loop, okay? You're going to do this in one line of code, and it's actually not that hard. So let's say the condition is, one of the two conditions is train.sex equals male, okay? And you'll see that that outputs a series of trues and falses, right? And let me, yeah, let me make this a little smaller so there's more space down here. Okay, let's say one of the conditions is sex equals male, and the other condition is train.age is less than 30. What I've done is I've said this condition, and that's what the ampersand means, this condition. Okay. So you want to combine those two conditions such that the end result is true only if both of those conditions are met. Okay. So the first three that we'll focus on, true, false, false, that's because this is a male younger than 30. This is not a male, so that doesn't work. This is not a male, and even though they are under 30, that condition is false because there's the ampersand. So I've defined two conditions, and I've said if both are true, output true, otherwise output false. So how do I turn this into a new column? Well, how about we do dot map, and we map true to, oh, actually I need a dictionary here. Map true to yes, and false to no. And we'll call that train bracket young male, okay? And let's look at the head again. And look at that. We've got a new young male column that is yes if it's a male below 30, and no otherwise. Like here's a male that was 35, so it said no, okay? So you don't have to write an if statement or an else. You don't have to write a loop. You just need to write conditions that output trues and falses, and you can map those trues and falses to a variety of, well, to different outputs. You can map this as true becomes 1, false becomes 0, like that would also work. And whoops, I put exclamation point. True becomes 1, false becomes 0. That would also work. So there's a lot you can do with just conditions. Okay. All right. Graphisos. I'm sorry, I'm sure I mispronounced your name. I've joined this to see if it is worth to change from R to Python. Oh boy, that is a complicated question. So it depends on your task, but I personally like Python better, but that's because of what I do in Python. I work with text a lot, and I don't like working with text in R. I do a lot of machine learning, and I prefer machine learning in Python. As far as like data munging, data cleaning, data analysis, I'm fine with both pandas, and if I'm doing it in R, I would use dplyr. I don't think, I mean, pandas and dplyr, they're different. They use different syntax somewhat. There definitely is a lot I like about dplyr. But should you change to Python? Well, my belief is always you should, a couple beliefs. One is you should learn one language really well before you move on to the next language. Number two is there's like a high cognitive cost of learning a new language and all of the different packages you need to know to do what you used to do in the old language. That's an argument for just investing more into the language you already know. However, if you work somewhere that is, uses a lot of Python, that's something to take into account. If there are conferences that seem to focus on Python and your area of interest, and they don't have an R conference in that area, you might want to think about learning Python for that reason. It's really, there's not like a right answer. Both Python and R are great languages for data science. But if you have a very particular task, there might be some compelling reason to use Python or R. Both are popular, at least for data science. Python is more popular than R for general purpose applications. So if you're building a web app off of it, it might be better to learn Python. But it's there's not like a strong one way or another answer I can give you. Okay. I cannot even believe I haven't even answered half the questions, but maybe the ones below are easier. Okay. How to find the top, Mantesh says, how to find the top repeating number from an array with their frequency. Okay, that is an easier one. Thank goodness, so I can answer it quickly. I'm going to use the value counts method. So if I do train.pclass.valueCounts, I will get the number of rows that had the p class of 3. There were 491. The number with there were 216 ones, and there's 184 twos. And that's just a column from the data frame. Like similarly, if it was sex, it would tell me that in the data set, there were 577 males and 314 females. Okay. Next one from Oystein. How can I fill NA based on a condition? Say I want to fill NA for all missing cities in the UFO data set, but only if the color is red. Okay, so this is kind of a combination of some of the things we've seen before. Fill NA for all missing cities. All right, so we got the UFO data set. And sometimes the city is null. So UFO.city.isNull.sum. There are 25 values of city that are null. So how do I fill that, but only if the color is red? Okay, so you would do something like this. UFO.loc, And what rows do I want to find? I want to find the rows where UFO.city.is null, and where, and where UFO dot, bracket colors reported, equals red. And I have to, let me look at, sorry, my mouse is acting up here, so I'm having a little trouble navigating. Let's look at colors reported. I think they're all caps. Colors reported dot value counts. Yeah, it's all uppercase. Okay, so colors reported equals red. So just on its own, this just shows me those columns. So I've got UFO.loc, and what rows do I want? I want the rows where the city is null and the colors reported is red. What columns do I want? I want all of them. Okay, now how do I fill NA based on a condition? Well, if I want to fill the city in that case, I would just put it right here, and then I would say new value. Okay, that's what I would do. That's it. I think I got that right. So .loc is great when you want to select out certain cities. I want to say for these rows, it's specified by a condition, and this column, I want to set a new value. Okay. All right. 1 second while I ease my throat here. Okay. Next one, any practical tips for parallel processing data frames, how to achieve something like asynchronous apply? Parallel processing, not my area of expertise. I'm sorry. Can you do parallel processing on a data frame? Certainly using Spark, you would use a Spark data frame, but can you do it with a Pandas data frame? I'm not sure. If there's anyone who knows how, I would love it if you would post an answer, but I'm sorry, I just don't know. Okay. Adrian asks, what are the similar apply family of functions in from R in Python Pandas? Okay, in R, you have like apply and sapply and tapply and lapply and rapply. I've actually forgotten what all of those do. However, there is an apply method. There's actually a DataFrame apply method. So you can do UFO.apply, or more commonly, UFO.city.apply, and you can pass an arbitrary function like, I think that'll work. Nope. What did I do? Object type float. I'm doing something wrong, but it's not completely obvious to me what. Object of type float has no len. All right. Anyway, I won't try to demonstrate it in code. The bottom line is everything you can do with those apply methods, I'm pretty sure you can do in Pandas. I don't know offhand how to directly translate all of them, but I do know there is a data frame apply method like this, and there's a series apply method like this. And you can pass it arbitrary functions. I've got a video on using the apply method. I think it's video 30 in the series. I would check that out, but I don't know how to like directly translate the code without relearning some R that I have forgotten. All right, Marvin, why isn't it called koala instead of pandas? I assume pandas means like pandas is short for panel data, I think. And that's why it's called pandas. It's not because of the animal, but it's kind of fun as an animal. So that's why the name is as such. Let's see. Umair, what are some examples of 3D data that panels are used for? I don't think of, like, as I mentioned previously, I don't think of panel data as 3D data as much as I think of it as a data frame with a hierarchical index. So that's the kind of, I guess I don't really know how to answer it other than that. I don't think of it as 3D data. Would Cartesian coordinates be considered 3D? You could put that in a panel, but I don't know if it would accomplish your objective. So you should always start with your objective and then end with the solution. And is the panel data the right solution? Probably not. Is a hierarchical index the right solution? I don't think so, but it depends on your goal. Okay. So that's the best I can say there. Tokes ads. Are you planning to continue the video series about pandas in any way? Or is it just going to stay at 30 videos provided? Don't get me wrong, the series is great, but I think not all pandas topics are covered yet. Of course, not all. Of course not everything is covered. Covering everything would probably require hundreds of videos, and I don't think I could make hundreds of pandas videos. I would get tired of it eventually. Am I going to continue it? Well, probably. I enjoyed making it a lot. The 30 videos I did create. The videos at the beginning took me about 4 hours per video to make. And by the end, because the topics were getting more complex, it probably took me 8 hours of video. So if I want to continue with the series, that's kind of me committing to like using 1 day a week of my work days to give away a free video, which I probably will do, but I have to think carefully about that trade-off because I've got a lot of other projects in mind. So working 1 day a week on pandas means only 4 days a week for any other projects. So yes is the likely answer. I don't have a timeline. It will be intermediate topics, I assume, because I've covered most of the basic topics, but I can't promise when it might be. Okay, Scott, preferred visualization method for exploring data. Native pandas, matplotlib, ggplot, etc. I use pandas as much as possible because my data is already in a data frame, and I can do it in one line of code most of the time. Matplotlib is what's working under the hood, and I tend not to write matplotlib code because I find it a little bit painful to do. It's just not how I think. So I find it challenging, so I tend to, I mostly make exploratory graphs anyway, so doing it in pandas seems to work fine most of the time. ggplot, I have not played around with, but now that it's under active development once again, I am planning to try that out because I do enjoy ggplot in R. I really like ggplot in R. So I will probably learn ggplot in Python at some point and see how I like it there. But I can only imagine I will like it because I like it how it works in R. Seaborn is another option, and I like using Seaborn. It produces kind of pretty visualizations. It makes certain things that are painful to do in pandas or matplotlib, it makes them easy. So Seaborn is another one, and I like Seaborn. I've used it many times, but the one downside is it's yet another interface to learn. It's yet another library to learn. So the short answer is I do as much as I can in pandas. Okay. All right. Al asks, when and how should you use filter? The pandas data frame filter. I have never heard of filter, but I will pull it up on my second screen and scan it. And on first glance, I have no idea when to use it. I would say that I don't know. I'd have to look into it. I've never used it personally. Sorry about that, Al. Okay, Al asks. He's getting if you vote, you'll get your question. Al, percent time versus percent. So time it runs something 3 times, and I don't think it outputs. Let's just try that. So if I do percent time it, whoops, let's see, it's a cell magic, but the cell, what did I do wrong here? I've got, oh, is it just percent? Yes, sorry, 1%. Okay, so I'm not sure, like, I get confused about the 1 versus 2 percentage signs, but if I want to use time it, so time it runs it 3 times and tells you how long it took. Time runs it once and actually outputs the result. Okay, so I usually use time because I actually care about the result. You use time it if you don't care about the result, you only care about seeing how fast it ran. Okay, so that's the difference. I don't know the parameters for time it. Okay, Abu, difference between PySpark DataFrame and Pandas DataFrame. Need to know when to use each. So Pandas DataFrame is good for in-memory computing. Okay, so Spark is good for distributed computing. You shouldn't use Spark if you don't need distributed computing. But if you need distributed computing, I don't think you can do it in Pandas, to my knowledge. Maybe you can. And if so, PySpark, or Spark in general, accessed by PySpark, has a data frame structure. And that data frame structure has like similar methods to the Pandas data frame, but they're not identical. Pandas is going to be easier to use. Eventually, Spark may catch up, but you're better off sticking with Pandas unless you need distributed computing. Okay. Don asks, tell me why I can't plot. There's no graph in my result. Just like this. Okay, so what the problem Don had is he's trying to plot something and it didn't appear. And if you recall, that happened to me earlier in the webcast before I said matplotlib inline. Okay, so in the Jupyter Notebook, if you want plots to appear in the notebook, you have to run matplotlib inline at least once. Well, you only need to run it once. Now, if you're not in IPython or the Jupyter Notebook, okay, I think what you need to do is to import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT and plt.show, okay? I believe that's what you need to do if plots are not appearing in your Python environment and you're not using IPython or the notebook. You run this code. But I could be wrong. I'm in the notebook so often that I sometimes forget. Okay, Kieran, how to check if 2 data frames are the same? Equals is not working. Also, how to find the delta between 2 data frames. Okay, I actually don't know if there is a way. I mean, so he's saying that, like, say, well, let's do a little test. Let's see, how can we do this? UFO2, no, I don't want to do that one. Drinks2 equals pd.read CSV bit.ly/drinks by country. Okay, so let's do that. And then let's also do drinks. And we're saying drinks equals drinks 2. And, okay, it outputs a list. It outputs a data frame of Booleans. Okay, so here's what I would do. I would say dot sum. We'll change it to not equal. Okay, so this is what I would do, I think. So I'm checking in how many cases the cells in drinks are not equal to drinks 2, and there's no difference in this case. Okay, now if I changed like drinks bracket, let's do dot iloc 0, 0 to be something else. Okay, now there's one difference. Okay, so that's the method I would use, but that relies on them being mostly well, they'd have to have the same index at the very least. I think they'd have to have the same number of columns and everything. So, okay, if you can believe it, I'm still going, and there are still questions. All right, I'll keep trying. A lot of folks have still stuck with me, so I'm gonna keep going because my voice has not run out. From Erica, how would I go about removing subgroups from one data frame column? Okay, so what we're trying to do is filter a data frame by multiple categories. Okay, so let's say, let's look for, let me think, which is a good one. How about, we'll go with drinks 2, okay? So filtering by multiple categories. So if I only wanted to keep Asia and Africa, I would say drinks.continent dot, what's the method I'm looking for? Is in, and I'd pass it a list of Asia, Africa. Okay. And that will show me only the rows where continent is Asia or Africa. If I want to get all the ones except Asia or Africa, I would just add this tilde, which means not, which means reverse trues to falses and falses to trues. And I get everything except Asia and Africa. Okay, so that's what I would do. Make sure when you have these cases, again, I will emphasize, you don't need to write for loops. I'll just glance at the chat for a second. Let's see. Actually, I'll come back to the chat at the end if I still have time and a voice. All right. From Joe, is there a way to get describe to include mode and median values? Okay, good, easy one, at least for me, but if you're new, of course, it might not be easy. So if you say drinks.beer.servings.describe, it tells you the median. That's what this 50th percentile means. These are the percentiles. This is your 5-number summary, your min, your max, your median, your 25th percentile, your 75th percentile. And so there's your median, okay? If you have a categorical column like continent.describe, it tells you the mode, and it's right here. It's labeled as top, okay? Balamurgan, how will I specify all else during a map command? For example, if I want to map male as 1 and everything else as 0 in a data frame column, how can I do that? Okay, let's see. Let's use head again. I'll actually use drinks 2 because I didn't screw it up. Drinks 2, and let's see. Let's say I want to create a new column where if it's Asia, then I want a 1, otherwise I want a 0. Okay. Drinks2.asia equal, sorry, not Asia. Drinks2.continent equals Asia. And that, well, actually, there's a really simple way to do this. It gives me trues and falses, and I can just say as type int, and it gives me 1s and 0s. Okay. So everywhere there's that it's Asia, you can get a 1, otherwise it's a 0. If you had a more complicated scenario, you could do like, you could do an or, and there might be a simpler way to do this. Actually there is, but I'm not going to do it right now. Continent equals Africa, and then wrap this whole thing in that. And now we get those, and we could say, well, we could just, there's lots of ways to do it from here. Whatever example I was thinking of, I lost it, but I was going to add some complexity, but no need at this point. That's how I tend to do things. I use as type a lot, I use map a lot, and I use conditions a lot. Scott asks, I use modes SQL Python combo. Are there performance reasons to do aggregation in SQL, or should I just pull the granular level data? So pandas is pretty well optimized. I'm not sure kind of the two options you're giving me, what you mean by pull granular level data versus aggregation in SQL. Just speaking to performance, pandas is pretty highly optimized. You could write the same code you want to do in SQL using pandas, which is faster. It's hard to say without, it's not my area of expertise, but they're both generally well optimized, depending upon the particular operation. So it's hard for me to give strong advice here, other than I try to do as much as possible in pandas because I know it well. But if you know how to do SQL well, you can do some stuff in SQL first and then export the results and then load it into pandas at that point. Miguel, is there an easy or automated way to switch or translate from a script to a Jupyter notebook? Yes, there is. Well, from a script to a Jupyter notebook, yes, I don't know it offhand, but I would just copy and paste it into the notebook. From a notebook to a script, what you want to use is something called NB convert. Okay. Jupyter NB convert, and you do it at the command line. And there are some examples here. And it's how I take my notebooks and turn them into scripts. So you end up writing code like, and I'll just put it in, like, you would do this at the command line. You would say something like, Jupyter NB convert -- to Python, and I have a template, so I would say template, and then template, I have this template called clean TPL, and then I pass it like the name of the notebook, my notebook.ipynb, and something like that will convert a Jupyter notebook to a Python script. And again, you do that at the command line, okay? Kumar, can you please explain how to detect and filter outliers? I actually talked about that earlier. You just have to define what an outlier means and either visualize looking for it or write some hard-coded rules, or you could perhaps use machine learning. Abhi asks, when are you going to start a video series on TensorFlow? I don't know. I may eventually. It won't be in the near future, but I do get a lot of requests on deep learning series. Kumar asks, what's an indicator matrix? I think that's pretty far beyond the scope of the webcast, so I'm going to leave that alone. Well, I mean, I think offhand I know what it is. Actually, I might be thinking of the identity matrix, which might be different from the indicator matrix. So I don't want to get the wrong answer here and give you bad advice. So I'm simply just not going to answer that one today. Okay, Carlo, about Jupyter Notebook. With print df, the text is getting right aligned. When I use df, a float is left aligned. Is there a way to get the float in the data frame aligned on the decimal sign? Not that I know of, but as always, feel free to make a comment under this question if you know personally. Okay. Aniket, what's the difference between pandas and a NumPy array? So pandas is built on top of NumPy. NumPy, under the hood, everything in pandas is stored as NumPy arrays. There may be some exceptions to that, but I'm pretty confident in that statement. And the thing with NumPy arrays is that everything has to be the same type, but pandas makes it so you can have heterogeneous types. So you can have different types in every column, different data types in every column. Pandas gives you a lot more high-level operations. NumPy is more focused on how to do computations really fast. Pandas takes advantage of that. But the bottom line is, if you're working with kind of real-world data, I generally recommend using pandas rather than NumPy. Kieran asks, what are primitive methods in pandas? Are they more efficient than others? I actually don't know what a primitive method is. Maybe it's a method that's called by other methods. I would say the following. Don't overthink how to get something done in pandas if you know of a way other than, like, okay, here are the signs that you should probably try doing things a different way. Number one, you're writing if statements. Number two, you're writing for loops. Number three, you're writing apply statements or apply method. Now, apply is sometimes super useful, but sometimes you can replace it with a built-in pandas function. So that's how I would optimize my code. I don't know about primitive methods. I'm going to guess that, well, I don't even want to guess. Bottom line is I wouldn't focus on which pandas method I should use. If I'm using a built-in pandas method, it's usually been optimized, and you don't want to try to overthink it. All right. I think the final question that's been posted, when to use the brackets when writing conditions to filter. Always safe to use them. Brackets are when you want to pass it to something else. So if my condition is drinks.continent equals Africa, brackets don't belong there, okay? However, if I want to pass that Boolean series to a data frame in order to filter rows, I use bracket notation, and that pulls out the rows in which there was a true. Similarly, if you're going to use .loc or .iloc or .ix or .iat, which I don't even know what it does, I just know it exists, but these like loc and iloc especially, you need to use brackets, and that's just how it works. Okay. He asks when to use. Okay, I meant combining two conditions. Okay, great question. So he's asking if you have two conditions, like drinks.continent, let's say or equals Asia. Okay. You actually, if you use multiple conditions in pandas, it's actually required that you use parentheses. Okay. It is required. Okay. Whoops, what did I do? Not loc. That's not what I want. I just want plain old this. Okay. So it is required that you use parentheses if you are using multiple conditions and passing it to bracket notation. Okay, that is all the questions there. I will glance through the bottom of the chat for other questions. Kevin, how long, Francisco asks, Kevin, how long did it take you to master R before changing to Python? I don't know. I don't know if I mastered R. I don't know if I mastered Python. I spent maybe a year in R before I started learning Python, maybe 6 months in R. But I wrote a lot of R code during that time, so that helped. Yeah, you know, that's, I guess that's all I would say. Number of loops. Al asked for time it. What's the difference between number of loops and number of times the cell ran? The number of, I think that's the same thing. I guess I'm not sure. Okay. Raj asked, please recommend a learning path for a successful career in data science. I know it's off topic, but I would be glad if you answer this. Okay, I'm going to give you a secret. Okay, so if you go to data school, this is not anywhere public. So to those of you who have stuck around the entire time, I want to give you something special. So go to dataschool.io/talk-python. Whoops, talk Python. Okay. dataschool.io/talk-python. So this is something that I gave to the listeners of the Talk Python to Me podcast. Okay. And it's a guide on launching your data science career. And I spent a lot of time writing it, and I will eventually make it kind of fully public. But since you asked and since you stuck around till the end, I wanted to give you that. So again, it's dataschool.io/talkpython. And I'll just paste it in chat for you, okay? So check that out. I will eventually make this maybe a blog post, or I will, or something else. But for now, it's just kind of set as private, and it's got all my advice in there. Okay, let me go back to my face because I am done showing my screen. Let's see. All right, 1 second and close the screen. All right. So to those of you who I am very impressed. You stuck around all the way to the end. Thank you so much for joining me. A couple end notes before you leave. Number one, the recording will be available shortly on this page. All the questions will be time coded. You can click on it and it will jump right to your question, okay? If you haven't already, I highly recommend watching my Pandas video series. It's free, it's on YouTube, there's 30 videos. Just click the button underneath the video that says watch the Pandas video series. If you enjoyed this and want to see another webcast, I would encourage you to follow me on Crowdcast. So find something I've written in chat, and I think you can just like click on my name and it will take you to a page that's like my profile page, and you can click follow, and then you'll get announcements every time I have a public webcast. If you want to follow me elsewhere, go to my website. It's just dataschool.io, and there's little buttons here for Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub. I have a lot on GitHub. I'm active on Twitter. I'm going to launch a Facebook page, and I've got obviously lots of YouTube videos. So if you want to follow me there, feel free, okay? I do teach an online course called Machine Learning with Text in Python. There's a link to it on my website. It just go, scroll below this sidebar, and you'll see something that says Data School Courses. Click on that if you want to learn some more from me, and I have online courses. And let's see. If you're not already on the Data School newsletter, I've added most of you. I'll be adding the rest of you soon. You can unsubscribe, of course, but it's a great way for you to hear about new tutorials, It's a great way to hear about when I record new videos, because quite frankly, subscribing on YouTube, you may never YouTube doesn't necessarily email you when I come out with a new video. You may never see it in your feed. So that's why I like to share everything with my newsletter. That's kind of like my community. Really glad to have the Data School community. So again, I will be adding you to the newsletter shortly if you're not already on it. And you can definitely keep in touch with me that way. All right, just doing one last scan through the comments, see if there's any other things. Toksad said, will the recording be on YouTube? Yes, I will upload it to YouTube. Kieran said it would be great to have a webcast on scikit-learn. I may do that. I don't know if it will be this year. I would love to do it. I let my newsletter subscribers vote, and they narrowly picked pandas. But, so many picked scikit-learn that I kind of want to do one of those as well. There you go. So it was such a pleasure for you guys to join me, you guys and girls, to join me today. Thanks again. It was really fun. I'm going to go eat some lunch and rest my throat. Have a good rest of your day. And I'll see you on YouTube. You can reply to my newsletter and I will get your email and I'll usually respond. So, okay. Again, thanks for joining me and I will see you later. That's it.